The moment we've all been waiting for, 22nd of June 2025. First Tesla Robotaxi rides begin. Tesla's invited a bunch of people in the Tesla community for a sneak peek at the service, and more videos continue to pop up around Austin, Texas, of Tesla's Model Y Robotaxis continuing to test. No one in the driver's seat, just the passenger seat, keeping an eye on things. No chaser vehicles either, out on their own in the wild. And so far, not a hitch. I've seen a grey Model Y driving around downtown Austin, another white Model Y on screen now as well, all clearly branded with Robotaxi as well, just so people know. More footage this time, a red Model Y, same intersection, and some perfect contrast here from a sleek, beautiful looking red Tesla Model Y Robotaxi to the butt-ass ugly abomination that is, well, I mean, call me crazy, but I think at least in the aesthetic department, Tesla's got Waymo beat. Let's listen in on the ARK Invest Tesla Robotaxi versus Waymo brainstorm.
Welcome to the Brainstorm, episode 92. Today we've got Daniel McGuire on the line talking about one of the most exciting futures out there, Robotaxi. Daniel, I feel like we talk about this a lot. It's potentially finally happening, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So maybe set the stage with what's happening, what you expect, and then we can let Nick tell us why he's skeptical.
Yeah, sure. So maybe to set the stage, in terms of last week, we saw for the first time driverless Model Ys in Austin, Texas, which is the first city Tesla plans to launch its Robotaxi service on. At the same time, Elon confirmed they're targeting a date for June 22nd, which could tentatively move depending on safety, which is a wise thing in my opinion, just given the history of the industry. We saw General Motors Cruise ultimately collapse because of a safety incident.
By the way, just confirming the 22nd of June is, depending on whether you're watching this immediately or soon after, either tomorrow or today. And everything seems to be right on track. No delay expected.
But why is this such an important moment for Tesla? Well, firstly, it's a transformational in their business model. So they are going to shift from hardware sales of their vehicles to recurring revenue with software-like margins. So that obviously helps the business case for Tesla, but maybe just in terms of rollout. So we know initially it's going to be in a small vehicle fleet of maybe 10 to 20. But ultimately, this will scale up to multiple cities by the end of this year and eventually millions of autonomous cars towards the end of next year, and then further growth after that. So quite an exciting week for Tesla and a lot to look forward to, but I'm sure Nick has a lot to comment on. We can help educate the viewers.
So I'm laughing at the smirk here because I've watched a few of these brainstorms, and I don't know if behind the scenes Nick's told you have to ask some really hilarious questions and be super skeptical. But that seems to be the role that he plays. And not reasonable skepticism, but embarrassing skepticism. Like, oh, but how's this going to work? That's not going to be possible. Isn't this going to happen? So I don't know whether Nick is playing a role or he genuinely is as skeptical and pessimistic as it seems. But you can kind of tell both of these guys are trolling Nick for playing this role or actually genuinely being that skeptical.
Well, how did I get painted as the bear here?
Well, yeah.
That's very funny. Because, Nick, every time I watch one of these things, you are the bear, the skeptic.
We can
just from one comment in the green room.
Nick believes just as we do in the Robotaxi future, making it safer for humans. But we need a heel, otherwise we're just.
It's not entertaining.
Exactly. Well, I can throw in the questions that I get all the time. Right, people say, "Oh, Waymo's already doing this, right? Geofenced area. So what's the difference between Waymo and Tesla in what they're doing?"
Yeah, sure. So maybe a quick Waymo versus Tesla comparison, and I think maybe it's helpful to do that on three fronts. So firstly, as it relates to data, so Tesla has a significant data advantage relative to Waymo. We believe Tesla's gathering just under 10 million miles of full self-driving data per day. That versus Waymo's 250,000 per day. And, why is this important? Well, firstly, it helps train their AI algorithms and helps them encounter the corner cases. And in fact, actually, Waymo just put out a paper last week, which confirmed that they see with increased data and compute, the performance of autonomous vehicles improves. So that's like a case in point coming from Waymo that additional data is helpful. On the cost front then, so, Waymo's vehicles is rumored to cost upwards of 180,000. And this is largely because of their complex sensors. They use a mix of LiDAR, radar, and cameras to help them negotiate their geofenced regions. In contrast, you have Tesla vehicles rolling off the line today, which can cost around $40,000 for a Model Y. You have the low-cost vehicle coming, starting to roll off the production line in the coming weeks, and that's forecasted to be sub $30,000 with EV credits. And then at some point in the second half of next year, you have the purpose-built Cybercab. So that has no steering wheel, no pedals, and that could be tending towards the $20,000 cost mark.
So just recapping the first two key points here, there's a third one coming. One, Tesla has a massive multiple order of magnitude data advantage, and even Waymo themselves recently putting out a paper saying that fuckloads of data equals improved capability, therefore lots of data is important. Point number two, Tesla has a massive cost advantage on the hardware today, and that's before even more affordable vehicles and then an even more affordable dedicated Cybercab is produced. So Tesla killing it on capability, aka data, and killing it on cost. Wait, what else could possibly be relevant? If you didn't know anything else, that's probably already enough to understand that it's game, set, match.
So that's data advantage, cost, and then just lastly, it's cheaper to produce a Tesla vehicle, but when you compare how much they can produce versus Waymo, so Waymo gave a fleet size of around 1,500 currently, and planning to add around 200,000 over the next year in what's not yet an automated assembly line. And in contrast, Tesla
200,000?
No, 2,000. Sorry, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, 2,000.
That's a
1,500. Hoping to add 2,000. And for context, Tesla can produce 5,000 in a day. So between data advantage, cost, and production, you can tell that we're super excited for Tesla to launch its Robotaxi service in the coming days.
Really, what else do you need to know? Massive data advantage, massive cost advantage, and the only company with the capability to be producing in these kind of numbers. Tesla's daily rate of production globally today produces multiple times more than Waymo's entire fleet today. And Waymo's big goal is to add another 2,000 vehicles, over the next 12 months or so? Brother, do you understand?
It's been a long time coming, so.
What odds would you place on the event actually happening this week?
Well, I don't think there's a quote event that's going to happen. I think it's just going to happen, right? It's like, I think it's starting like it's not like they're cutting a ribbon and then all of a sudden it's happening. I think it's like starting with internal people, which has been in the past what's been going on, but with safety drivers, probably.
So to be clear, as we've seen, now this may have been recorded a few days ago, presumably, but it's happening, motherfuckers. Invites have gone out to a bunch of Tesla nerds who will be taking rides in Tesla Robotaxis in Austin on the 22nd, aka today or tomorrow, or possibly yesterday, depending on when you're watching this. And I refer back to the video posted by Reed on X here. We're already seeing Tesla Robotaxis, Model Ys, in Austin, driving around downtown with nobody in the driver's seat. Instead, you've got somebody in the passenger seat. So imagine this, right? Imagine if somebody opened one of the rear doors and sat in the back. That's your quote-unquote event. No ribbon cutting necessary. We're seeing exactly what will be happening tomorrow, happening right now. The only difference is there's nobody sitting in the back of these vehicles. On the 22nd, there'll be a bunch of Tesla nerds taking rides in these same vehicles in these same areas in downtown Austin. AKA, odds of this happening are 99.99999969420%.
Continue that with no safety drivers, then expand it to the public, and then go from there.
Yeah. And
so the day just, sorry, hold on. The day just marks what exactly? That it's going beyond just Tesla internal employees?
That's my understanding.
Are they rolling it out to then a select few individuals? Because it's only 20 cars, so it's not like they're going to launch an app.
Well, that has not been confirmed.
The app is already
the app already exists. It's the Tesla app that anyone who owns a Tesla has, and that will be updated. But as it relates to who's going to be in the vehicles, it's unclear yet whether it's going to be invite only or open to the broad public. I would assume it's going to be invite only, just given the limited fleet size initially. But again, to the point on scaling, this can scale quite rapidly, and Tesla are being quote unquote paranoid about safety, which I think is a prudent approach to take.
And then I'm curious because the story here has always been, this is me putting on my bear hat. The story here has always been, you have a general technology with cameras, so you should be able to drop these cars anywhere in the world and they will be able to execute on the vision of autonomous ride hailing. But Tesla has been driving these cars essentially in circles around Austin for 6, 7, 8 months now. So clearly they're doing some refinement to the individual geographic area. And I think we've talked about it on this call as well. Like in one of the earnings, I believe, I don't know exactly who spoke about it, but there was fine tuning for geographic areas, specific Austin. So I'm curious if that vision of, general autonomous ride hailing is actually happening, or if this is more or less smoke and mirrors and it's actually just being refined exactly to Austin. And how is that actually any different than what Waymo does?
Yeah, so I think for Austin initially, lots of fine tuning, but even from what Elon has said about the algorithm as well, is it seems like it's generalizable. On what they were saying, kind of a mixture of experts approach, it's like there's a baseline generalizable capability that should function anywhere, and then fine-tuned for geographic locations would make it even safer. And so it's like you can imagine the baseline's already going to be safer than humans, and then when you're in a snowy area, having something that's fine-tuned on snowy conditions is going to outperform, rather than if it was last fine-tuned on, I don't know, San Diego, and it's not taking into account as much snow. So then it's like you take it without updating to a snowy area, and it's still capable because it's using the model logic of vision in, output out, but probably not as safe as something that was then fine-tuned. So I think, is it smoke and mirrors? No. Is it hyper focused right now, especially at the launch when all eyes are on them? Yes. Does that mean that it's not generalizable? No. So that's kind of my read on it.
Yeah. Well, maybe the follow-up question is then how exactly do you get it to scale, right? Daniel, you mentioned in the beginning, like by the end of the year, this is going to be happening in multiple cities, but it's taken them this long to only put potentially 20 cars on the road in 5 days from now. So how do you go from that to within the next 6 months, multiple cities, hundreds of cars, if you had to do all of this just for 10 to 20 cars in one city?
You start and then I'll add on.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that's important is the size of the localization. It's not like a specific Austin localization where it's like the cars go into Austin, they map the route, and then they're solely just operating in that. It's like the kind of the layout of Austin and the geographic region. It's not like the city itself. And the other point as it relates to scale is like I mentioned at the beginning of this call, Tesla is being super paranoid about safety, and like one accident here can push it back by several months from a regular.
Here we go. I was trying not to interrupt for a while, let those guys finish their points. But this is the key here. Tesla needs to be hyper cautious initially, because as soon as there's a single incident, it's not going to be an issue with regulators. I mean, initially they're like, what the fuck, bro? But Tesla will provide plenty of data and show accidents per mile. The real issue is the media, who absolutely guaranteed, no question, the first time there's a single incident, minor collision, or even just something embarrassing and awkward with no collision involved, but someone catches it on camera, you can guarantee every journalist will be ferociously jerking off with one hand and writing an article with the other hand about how Tesla Robotaxi has an accident, it's the end of the world, because it'll get more clicks than anything has ever been clicked before. So it's in Tesla's best interest to be massively overtuned for safety, even though from a rational point of view, the only thing people would really care about is crashes per mile, accidents per mile versus a human driver, which Tesla wouldn't begin operating robotaxis unless they were confident their own software will be far safer than a human per mile anyway. But that's entirely separate from what's going to happen in the media as soon as there's a single incident. And you can bet every hack who pretends to be a journalist on the planet right now has already written their article about the first Tesla Robotaxi accident, just waiting in to fill a few of the key details. They'll be doing backflips the day this happens. So it's definitely in Tesla's best interest, from a perception point of view, to go far above and beyond what is necessary to be abundantly cautious in their autonomy rollout initially.
A tree standpoint, so in my opinion, rightly so, just being super cautious as it relates to safety. And then ultimately the data will show out that these vehicles are much more safer than humans. And then really it's just a matter of the regulators looking at the data and reading it when they have enough at scale, which Tesla can do with its fleet. And then that can help accelerate into multiple cities. And maybe just lastly, before Sam, love to hear your thoughts, but on the generalizable point, there's videos of Tesla full self-driving operating in China without any kind of specific training within China. Tesla have said that they've been training it on YouTube videos rather, because they just can't get access to export the data. So that gives a testament to the actual quality of the AI algorithm running. It's not a case of going to a region, mapping out the region, and then pressing go. It's quite a generalizable solution, and an element of safety is being considered when you talk about their rollout, in my opinion. But Sam, I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a few things here. One, going from 0 to 1 is different than going to 1 to n. And so it's like, okay, let's just say, even if they were to do exactly what Waymo's done, and we've seen, right, Nick, we went through the Mary Meeker deck. It's like Waymo's gaining share from Uber and Lyft in SF, even though it's expensive. So
but they are doing exactly what Waymo has done.
Right.
So I guess that's my point. It's like we're talking about like how the strategy is different from what Waymo's doing, yet they're rolling it out in exactly the same way Waymo has rolled it out.
Right. So that's why I think it's such an interesting thing, because I think right now it would appear that that is the case, even though they're on two completely different trajectories. So it's like, I agree. In this first instance, right, it's like, it's small, it's geofenced. It looks like what Waymo is doing, but it's fundamentally different. The vehicles are a third the price. It's vision only. And like Tesla can actually manufacture vehicles. So it's like those three things, and kind of ties back to what Daniel said. It's like, yes, if you look right now and you were just to say, oh, small launch, geofenced, right? You'd say, oh, they're doing the exact same thing. And it's like, if they were doing the exact same thing, even as if that were the case, it's like Tesla could undercut Waymo's pricing. And we already saw from the Mary Meeker deck, Waymo's gaining share from Lyft and Uber. So it's like that, even if it was the exact same thing, you're like, okay, it would still be an opportunity for Tesla. But what we're saying is that even though it might look like that at square one, it's fundamentally different. And it's like you can...
And clearly this is obvious. And I'm not sure, again, if Nick's supposed to be the heel or like, does he actually think that they're the same thing? I refer you to the point that was made earlier in this video. Tesla FSD operating in China without local training. All Tesla needed to do to teach their FSD software to operate safely in China, which is already generalized and already knows how to drive, period, not drive in XYZ region, was for literally the software to watch some YouTube videos to understand some of the local nuance in China, e.g. signage on roads. That's it. That's all that needed to happen. And suddenly it's operating quite safely in China. This is proof that what Tesla has created is completely distinct from Waymo. It's generalized. A little bit of fine tuning that's happening, especially for Austin for the launch. It's confusing a lot of people, potentially including Nick here, into thinking it's exactly the same technology and approach as Waymo. Show me a Waymo operating in China, having just been trained how to read Chinese road signs and understand the road rules there from some YouTube videos. Oh wait, you won't, because it can't, because it ain't a generalized solution.
You can say, okay, I won't believe it until I see it. And in which case, wait and see. But we should be able to see that, right? Why go 20 vehicles at the start? It's like any Tesla crash gets national news attention.
Nailed it. As I said, he gets it.
Yes.
Before FSD, right? That was just when they were electric, and everyone hates on Tesla and electric, even though there's, tens of thousands of accidents and none of them get reported. Anytime there was a fire, Tesla makes national news and you get tons of headlines saying, oh, Teslas aren't safe, even though they're safer and less likely to catch on fire than gas cars. And so you'd have to imagine the exact same thing is going to hold true for autonomous, if not be an even bigger lightning rod.
Right. The first autonomous incident with a Tesla vehicle going to be 100 times more media attention, at least, than any previous Tesla incident. You can count on it.
So I think it's like we should expect any misstep is going to be covered in extreme megaphone media land. And so it's like start with 10 to 20, make sure it's perfect, learn the operation side of it, right? This is that 0 to 1 step. And then it's like, yeah, it should be much easier for Tesla to go from 20 to 40 than Waymo, right? The fact that Waymo, in theory, has a product that works and they can roll it out, and they're only adding 2,000 vehicles in this coming year is crazy. Waymo's first commercial ride in an autonomous vehicle was in 2018. So now we're 6.5 years later. They have a fleet of 1,500 cars, and they're going to add 2,000 cars this year. It's like Tesla literally makes, close to 5,000 cars a day, to Daniel's point. And so, if you do want to take the stance of, oh, let's wait and see, it's like that is the skeptic's take, and it's acceptable to have that stance. I think there's enough data out there to suggest that even though step one might look similar, they're on two completely separate tracks.
Let's be real here. It's just an IQ test. Simple as that. There's little puzzles. In fact, let's bring one up now. This is what I'm talking about. Anyone who takes the time to look at, observe, and understand what's happening today, to understand Waymo's approach, what they've done, how they're doing what they're doing, versus Tesla, already has the first 8 boxes filled in. Their job is to guess what's in the final box. Now, you can always just pound your hands and fists on the table, go, I'm not going to guess until you tell me what the answer is. I mean, that's one approach. That's how you miss out on a massive opportunity. Approach number 2 is to actually go, hang on a minute, what can I determine is likely to be here? Now, I'm not going to run through how to figure this one out. I mean, this is literally the first question on an IQ test. I think everyone watching can understand this one. I wasn't joking when I said that it's an IQ test. There's enough information now to have an extremely high level confidence prediction about what we will find in the final box here. What we will find is Tesla massively scaling autonomy because they've produced a generalized solution, have huge scale and a massive cost advantage. Never mind the data advantage. It's G fucking G. And it's certainly an option to sit in the corner and cry and say, I'm not going to even try and guess. I'm going to wait until somebody tells me what's in this final box before I decide, oh yeah, fair enough, that's what's going to be there. Or alternatively, you can anticipate because you have enough information if you can pass the IQ test to figure out how this one ends. And just to be extremely clear, I'm not joking when I say that it's an IQ test. If you can't figure this one out and you've tried, you're probably just not the sharpest tool in the shed. Now, if you haven't taken the time to try, it's a different story, right? If you haven't actually taken the test, you can't fail it, so to speak. But if you've taken the time to look at this in detail and you can't figure out how it ends, I think it's safe to say that is a direct measure of your intelligence. I'm not even sorry for saying that. It's just true.
Yeah.
Legally speaking, they couldn't even roll this out nationwide in the way that you're trying to describe, right? Like they have to take this approach, which means they're kind of forced to always just follow in Waymo's footstep. And I understand the point. Well, they can deploy more cars at scale than Waymo, which, okay, but they're still going to be hamstrung by which cities and states allow them to actually operate. So you can't actually scale.
Well, Daniel, right. We're going to talk about the recent developments in Trump and Elon land.
Yeah. So firstly, yes, autonomous vehicles are regulated on a state-by-state basis. But there have been, several articles over the last couple of months, call it, of talk of moving it from state-by-state to federal. So meaning you could kind of copy and paste from one city to another without having to go through the regulatory process for each state. And you can kind of see some movement on that. And in fact, just on Friday, it was reported that in America, to operate a vehicle without a steering wheel and any human controls, you need to get an exemption. And traditionally, that takes a couple of years. But I think it was NHTSA or one of the other safety bodies stated that.
Fact check, it was NHTSA, just saying.
It's now going to take a couple of months. So you can kind of see that they're already accelerating that process, and there's a bit of tailwind on the regulatory front. And just to caveat that too, so people are aware, it's not purpose-built vehicles that are going to be operating in Austin. These are just standard Model Ys coming straight off the production line. That kind of purpose-built is more so 2026 onwards, but there definitely is tailwinds as it relates to the regulatory environment in the US at least. I know in Europe it's a bit more difficult to expand in different regions, but there's enough of an addressable market in the United States to kind of satiate demand and kind of taste over the next couple of months to years at least. So,
and then I'll just throw this in. This is another key differentiating point between Waymo and Tesla, aside from scale, which obviously, even if you're going city by city, scale matters, right? Mm-hmm. If you launch an SF and then all of a sudden there's 30,000 Teslas versus single thousand or less Waymos, that's fundamentally different, even though it's the same city footprint. But the big difference as well is the ridership model, like being able to opt in a la Airbnb versus Waymo having to partner with Uber, right? And that's because, during the day you get the peak trough demand. So rush hour happening. And so if you're Waymo, you only want as many vehicles as you can utilize efficiently. And so that's like, if the curve is like this, right, you get the morning rush hour here, evening rush hour here. It's like you're going to have a low level of vehicles that are always going to be used, whereas Tesla can have that same level and then incentivize people to put their cars into the fleet during those peak hours.
Correct. And it's an important point. What Sam was essentially saying here is that in order for Waymo to have a slightly cost-effective service, even though it's not at all, they can't have enough vehicles on roads to meet all demand, inclusive of the peak demand times, e.g. early morning and in the evening. Because if they did that, most of the time, most of their vehicles would be doing fuck all, just sitting around doing nothing. not a good use of your technology, especially when it costs you apparently $180,000 to put one on roads. You don't want them sitting around doing nothing for large parts of the day. Tesla, on the other hand, in theory, could have a comparable amount of vehicles to meet the steady state, sort of slower times, but then incentivize customers who own Tesla vehicles to add their vehicles to the Robotaxi fleet during peak times, which, by the way, spoiler alert, during peak times, you can charge more, meaning there's more of a financial incentive for customers to add their vehicles to the fleet temporarily to supplement the number of Tesla Robotaxis. That said, given Tesla's staggering cost advantage in terms of putting an actual vehicle on roads, if they wanted to, they themselves could operate their own fleets of dedicated Tesla Robotaxis, which could sit around idle for most of the day just so they could meet all peak demand, because they have such a massive cost advantage it wouldn't matter. However, probably not the most sensible financial decision. Better for them to cater to the majority of demand during off-peak times with their own fleet, and then have customers supplement those massive peak times.
And so that allows kind of a different level of penetration in each market as well.
Do you think that we overweight scale here in being able to deploy a number of vehicles faster? Because was it Uber that gave data on Waymo and how they're utilized 10x more effectively than drivers, which would suggest that you probably don't need as many cars as one would expect to fulfill demand.
Yeah, definitely. Daniel, you take this. I know you and Tasha have done a lot of work on the unit economics side.
Yeah. Even like on the vehicle front, like even if you don't need as many vehicles, I mean, there's only so many cities you can do like 2,000, 3,500 vehicles like Waymo has. And before I touch on unit economics, one other thing I'd like to note about scaling cities is, Waymo announced in December, I think of 2024, that they want to expand to Miami. Those Miami trips aren't starting until some point in 2026. So you're talking about a lag from maybe 12 plus months to announcement to launching in a city. That's going to be a lot faster with Tesla, just given their generalized solution.
True and important. And to the earlier point about you not needing as many vehicles as you might think, this is absolutely true. If you saw yesterday's video, I shared my own quote-unquote estimates, which are actually intentionally massively overinflated, and went through an extrapolation at the end of that video showing how Waymo today is capturing more than 25% of gross bookings for ride-hail in San Francisco with around 600 vehicles, maybe a little bit more. In theory, to capture 100% of gross bookings, they need about 2,400, 2,500, 2,600 vehicles. Keeping in mind they do charge a little bit above average, so you're probably going to need a few more, but somewhere in that vicinity. The estimates I was using, even my low end, were 4 to 5 times higher than that amount. And James Dowmer chimed in, funnily enough, suggesting that my estimates appear to be overstated by a factor of around 5 times, which is pretty closely in line with the extrapolation I did at the end of the video. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because 1, I don't have a gigantic brain. I wish I did. And 2, I tend to be extremely optimistic. So I'm trying to ultra sandbag my own estimates of how many vehicles would be needed. But James shared that he estimated how many vehicles will be required for robotaxis to do 100% of rideshare currently in the city of Chicago. The number? About 10,000. Now, Tesla makes that many vehicles globally in about 2 days. In the US alone, they could produce this many vehicles in about a week. Chicago is the 3rd largest city in the United States. And in theory, Tesla, just from US production, could saturate the entire market and, in theory, have a 100% share of ride-hail. Of course, they won't take time for that, by redirecting less than 1 week of domestic production from US factories. This is a really big deal.
But yeah, on the unit economics, and credit to Tasha Keeney here, she's done a lot of work on this over the last decade or so. But, we think a Tesla or a Tesla could be maybe 30 to 40% cheaper on a cost per mile basis relative to Waymo at scale. And that's largely just because of its vertically integrated strategy and fewer sensors. And this is extremely important and somewhat relevant given last week, OB, I believe, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but a price comparison app came out with San Fran data, and to Sam's point on Waymo taking share from Uber and Lyft, it found that, on average, a Waymo ride costs 40% more than an Uber and a Lyft. So people are willing to pay more price for an autonomous vehicle. So I don't see why, when Tesla can come in and undercut that price umbrella, why there shouldn't be a significant increase in demand for their service.
And Nick, to your point, that's exactly why you need the opt-in, like Airbnb model, is because yes, it's like these vehicles can do far more rides than a human driver, but during rush hour, you can only, it's like if everyone's using a car, each car can only give 1 ride at a time.
Yeah.
And so it's like the increased utilization matters across the duration of the day, but at the peak point in time, you need to be able to meet that. Maybe, as we wrap up here, this is not to say Waymo is bad, right? Like yes. Waymo is great. Waymo is better than humans and it's safer than humans. I think that's like the to me, the craziest status quo we've accepted, maybe not the craziest, one of the craziest, is it's like, okay, 40,000 people dying in traffic incidents on the road is the price we're willing to pay to drive cars. That's a crazy thing to accept. And humans are terrible drivers, right? It's like, I take Uber and Lyfts all the time, and half the time the driver's texting or looking at something else, and you're like, okay, you're like, that's fine. Yeah, I'm like, am I getting out of this car? No, you're just like sitting there, buckling the seatbelt, holding on. You're like, okay, don't crash. So humans, low bar. Autonomous, very good. Waymo, better than humans. And we think Tesla will be less expensive and greater scale than Waymo. Is that
my last question for both of you? Do you think the Waymo partnering with Uber strategy is something that Tesla will end up adopting? As in, I know they're trying to go at it alone.
Oh my God, dude. I think if Tesla can solve autonomy and they can build an app, zero reason for Tesla to partner with Uber. And of course, look at Tesla, the company today, vertically integrated as fuck. A lot of derpy traditional investors think this is a great idea. Yeah, Tesla's definitely going to partner with Uber. Tesla will benefit a lot from being on the Uber platform because Uber already has an app for ride hail. If you ran 10 trillion different versions of this simulation, you wouldn't find a single one in which Tesla partners with Uber.
With their own application. To me personally, I'm taking off my bear hat. This is my actual opinion. I don't think that's the right approach. I don't understand why you wouldn't seed the market on platforms that already have massive distribution. So I'm curious if you think, they'll partner with Lyft or even Uber just to get in front of, the mass market of ride hailers.
I think if we take what we've heard from Tesla so far, it's clear that they currently don't have an intention partnering with Uber. And I think Sam often says this point, and I always echo it. It's like, when I look for an Uber, you open up an Uber app, you open up a Lyft app, and if it's like 10 cents cheaper, I'm going for the cheaper one. If all it takes for me to do is just download the Tesla app and it's like a $1 cheaper, then I think that says all you need to know about consumers. But Sam, I don't know, curious if you disagree with that point, but I'd be very surprised at this stage if Uber partners with Tesla or vice versa.
Yeah, I think Tesla needs to go at it solo, at least at first, and see what the dynamics look like with the Airbnb model. I imagine it will work, and then they don't need to partner. If for some reason it doesn't work, then I think that opens up the door to potential partnership, but I don't think their instinct is to want to partner.
Do we have the data on, because in theory we could prove out what you just said, Daniel, and I agree with you, right? But with Waymo, do we know if the majority of the rides today are coming from the Waymo One app or coming from Uber?
I don't know. I'm sure there's data we can go out to find. But I know, like in some cities, I think it's Phoenix, and
it's
maybe
solely through. Some of them are solely through.
Yeah,
solely through. Yeah.
But I think from my experience with any kind of autonomous companies, like I've spoken to some autonomous delivery drone companies, and they've told me that, most of their deliveries come directly through their own app relative to someone like Uber or any delivery app. So that's just kind of one incremental data point, but maybe that could be a task we could do and figure that out. But so far it's kind of region dependent.
Yeah.
Nick, I know it's not your natural state to be pessimistic, so we appreciate you putting on your bear hat here.
Yeah. I took my bear hat off. Whoops, there was another one on.
Shit, that's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, got him.
And these bare hands.
Oh, no.
All right. We'll see everyone next week. Daniel, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
So good conversation here. Lots of valid points raised, especially here and here. I think the biggest one, Tesla really has developed a generalized solution for autonomy. That's very important for scale. But what else is important for scale is mass production capabilities, which Tesla's already doing. In short, the key takeaway here, if I'm right, by the way, I am. Yeah, I did just say that. It's true. Most people, especially traditional investors, are going to be shocked at how quickly Tesla's fleet of autonomous vehicles scales and not only captures a small slice of the ride-hail market, but the majority of the profits, especially in the US. By the way, quick side note, the least important markets for Tesla in terms of ride-hail, the third world, most people can't afford yet, although we'll get there eventually when costs come down enough. And of course, China. Why China? Very low actual expectations for income, salary, wages, meaning deleting the cost of the driver doesn't have anywhere near as much of an impact in terms of cost per mile in China versus, say, the US. With Tesla's massive scale, and I do mean massive scale, a couple of years from now, people are going to be looking back going, holy shit, he wasn't joking. Comes massive profits and a complete transformation of Tesla's financials and therefore how people value the company. 22nd of June, motherfuckers, it begins. Want more content? Early access? Bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 is awesome. I've been taking it daily now for more than 3 years. It's a great way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's packed full of vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus has prebiotics, probiotics, and adaptogens to improve gut health, regularity, and help your body handle stress. I'm always looking for an edge to help me feel and perform my best, which is why I haven't missed a day of AG1 for more than 3 years. Just try it and see how you feel. Click the link in the pinned comment or head to drinkag1.com/SMR and get yourself a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 travel packs.